authentically peculiar, authentically peculiar, authentically peculiar.
Authentically Peculiar with Marcia. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to Authentically Peculiar with Marcia. I am your host, Marcia Blaine, a licensed professional counselor, a clinically certified hypnotherapist, a trauma specialist, and I'm here to end this beautiful year with some helpful tips as you move into 2023. I want you to take a moment and congratulating yourself for getting through all the things that you've experienced this year. You know those things, the things that tried to break you, the things that challenged you, that made you cry, that made you sad, that made you want to fight, the things that made you feel like you were not validated, as if you didn't have a voice, the things that made you feel like you didn't matter. But I'm here to tell you that you can actually stop carrying that old baggage and move into 2023 free from the baggage. You know, if you were to go to the airport right now and you had to check in a bag, it would cost you money. And if you didn't have the money, or if the bag was overweight, you would have to make the necessary adjustments. I want you to consider that this year you need to make the necessary adjustments now so that when you get ready to board into 2023, anything that is not necessary for you to reach your purpose and your process and your progress, go ahead and shed it off. Yeah, you could do that. So, as we begin going down these 10 things that I want to hit on about releasing the baggage of your past so that you can be your best self, go ahead and grab your pen and paper. You'll want to take some notes. You'll also want to share with others on Spotify so that they can actually grab these tools as well. Go ahead and run over to YouTube, Authentically Peculiar with Marcia. Like and subscribe. Share that with your friends as well so they can catch those 5-minute meditation. My goal is to help people to be their absolute best self. And in order to do that, you have to be equipped with the right tools to get you there. So let's get started. One of the first tips that I want to challenge you to do is honor yourself by setting boundaries. And I know there's been a big fad and a push about setting boundaries, but let's talk about it a little bit more. Establishing boundaries. One, there's no magic ball. Let's throw that out the window. People are not going to automatically know how to treat you based on the way that you treat them. You're treating them the way that you treat them because that's how you desire to be treated, but they may not be able to recognize that. So your weapon of choice is your voice. It's what you have to say. It's the standards that you set. If you don't want people yelling at you, over talking you, devaluing what you have to say, invalidating your story, your experience, you need to make them aware that when you do these things, here are the consequences. Those consequences could look like I'm cutting you off. Those consequences could look like I'm going to do this, this, and this, or whatever it is that brings you peace, right? Sometimes, yes, including family, we have to cut people off if they aren't going to honor us and our boundaries. Now, the catch is if you've never told anyone that these are the boundaries that you set, then I'm going to need you to tell them first so that they can know what it is that they're going to honor. Here's the second catch to that. If you aren't honoring the boundaries in your own life, how can you expect others to honor those same boundaries that you set? really difficult, because if you're saying, don't down talk me, don't demean me, don't treat me like a kid, then that means that you can't down talk yourself. You can't demean yourself. You can't put yourself in that kid's space and still expect to be treated like an adult. We all play a part of where we are in our life. So you have to really sit down and honor yourself with your boundaries. I know for me, one of my major boundaries with my family is don't bring me any family's gossip. I don't want to hear it. I'm not a trash can. I'm not going to receive it. Don't ask me about other people's situations because I don't know. And even if I do know, I don't know, right? Because that's part of my boundary. I honor myself with those boundaries. Then, if people have a tendency to disregard my boundaries, guess what Marcia does? I'll remind them of my boundaries and then I'll shut them down for a few months where there's no conversation, because my spirit person, me inside, has to remain at a place of peace for me. You have to try that for yourself. You have to choose peace in your life. And part of that is going to be setting those boundaries with other people so they can understand how to treat you. But they're watching to see if you're the example that you speak. All right. Number 2, empower your voice. There are going to be people who are going to be stuck in your past. I've said this statement before. In 2016, when my mother passed, people were talking about the little girl by my nickname, but they didn't know the grown, almost 50-year-old woman, Marcia. And I had some elders that was talking to me as if I was a kid. And I had to remind them, one, you don't know me. You knew me as a kid. I'm not a kid, I'm a grown up. Two, you won't be able to call, yell, express yourself in the manner that you're doing. It's disrespectful to me. I'll cut you off, and I have no problem with that. Three, I am not anyone's beat up post. I don't care what you're going through. We're all at a high time of emotions, but I will not take anyone's abuse. That is a standard in my everyday life. I don't care who you are. I don't allow people to talk to me in a demeaning tone. I don't allow people to get aggressive with me. We can disagree about things because we're human. We're not going to always agree on things, but it is the delivery for me. If your delivery is intentional to be demeaning, I'll go ahead and cut you off. That may be a boundary that you need to set, including with family, including with your parents, because I know that there are a lot of people who are wrestling with, how do I set a boundary with my parents? They're my parents. They are your parents, but you're raised and you're now an adult. And that adult space requires certain level of respect. Now, you're not going to do anything to, at least I hope you don't, to disrespect your parents. But likewise, you should remind them of the things that you feel are disrespectful to you. Oftentimes, people don't do that because they go back to that inner child. And we'll talk about that person in a little bit, but they go back to that inner child who is often unheard, who is often unseen, who didn't get heard at a little person's space. And so as they've gotten older, that little person still wants to be seen. So guess what? When you're throwing those tantrums, when you're getting upset, when you're angrily cutting people off, and then it sets up in you anxiety and depression, and you're crying and you're mad and you can't let it go, and it's actually holding you hostage to your past self. You have to give a voice to your expectations and to your standards on how you interact with others. They're going to get mad. They're going to say things like, you think you all that, you don't disrespect me. I'm your mama, I'm your daddy, I'm your auntie, I'm your uncle, I'm whomever. And you can just politely say, these are my boundaries and expectations. Any behavior outside of these things will no longer be accepted. You don't have to be nasty, but you do have to empower your voice. They cannot honor you if they don't know what your standards are, if they don't understand what your expectations are. You have to decide to honor you in that same space. All right. Next, I call this the meeting of the minds. You have to be willing to have a meeting with your younger self and your now self. Why is that important? Your younger self oftentimes have unresolved issues, whether it is abandonment and neglect, abuse, mental, physical abuse, fear, lack of support, being invalidated, all of those different things actually came through your body and your mind during the developmental stage. If you don't have or didn't have the strength to begin to adjust and deal with that younger person, that younger self is still trying to come up and be recognized. That younger self is still trying to say, I matter. And it usually comes in an adult form of tantrums, being angry, lashing out, cursing people out, being on the couch for days and days at a time, being depressed because people don't understand you, being activated by one or two words that swing you right back into your past. All of those things have to be addressed. Typically, what I encourage people to do is sit down and be intentional about a conversation with your younger self. See what that younger self has to say. I know people are saying, well, that sounds like you may be a little C word. I don't like calling people that. But your truth is, you're not. Your truth is the same way your adult self needs a voice. Your younger self needs to be able to say, when I was young, and here's an example, my younger self used to scream for attention and to feel validated by others because it screamed for attention and being validated for my parents not being available to do that. My mom, oh my gosh, she was the absolute best. She worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs. So physically and mentally, she had the strength and the stamina to provide and stay up for us. But she could not provide a lot of the emotional support during those younger years because she was always in a position of survival. I had to understand that my mother gave me her absolute best with food, clothing, shelter, and as much security as she could provide. But that is how she knew to be present, right? Me, though, I needed physical touch. I needed a hug. I still today, my love language is words of affirmation. So I know that I've had to work through the little girl side of me, having those words of affirmation and understanding that those affirmations now can come directly from me, not based on anyone else, right? And so when you begin to assess your younger self, you have to identify, what is it in me, in my younger self, that I missed out on? I will put a plug in right now. I would encourage you that if you haven't begun that younger inner child work, you may want to work with a therapist, because it may bring up some things in you that trying to handle it alone would be overwhelming and scary. And it really could create a cave effect where you run back in hiding because you're afraid of the pain that will come. But for those of you who are listening that have done some of their younger self work, I would encourage you to sit down and write. Be quiet. Invite your younger self to come forward. Listen, child, what do you need to say? What do you need for others to know? Once you do that, then you can validate, man, I sure hate that we didn't get it right when we were younger because we didn't know to make this request. But now, as an adult, I know to make this request. So I'm going to go ahead and take the journey from here with the new knowledge of what we need as one person, right? When you do that, you will find that the reason why you react to certain statements and situations is because you have those underlying scars that were never addressed. That's where change comes in. That's where situations will have to be renewed. That's where your own power of your voice has to come into effect. Yeah, right there. Y'all see my Grinch? It's that time of year. So making sure that you have that meeting of the minds. But then as an older person, you also want to identify your needs. What are your needs? One of the things that I had to say when I was doing my own inner work to my younger self was, I got this now. I don't need you to show up having tantrums because I got it. I heard you. I heard what neglect and abandonment and rejection. I heard what not being chosen meant to you. But I got it. I got you. And I can promise you that I'm going to take it the rest of the journey. Let me share with you a personal situation where I got that from. I had the pleasure of being present as my mother was going through her transition. And one of the things that I knew was an unresolved issue for my mom that made her tough, that made her protective, was being violated and abused as a child, physical abuse and sexual abuse, right? And I remember them trying to handle my mother a little rough and, disrobe her, and she grabbed her clothes. And I saw her little girl come forth and said, nobody can hurt me. My mother was no longer talking. Her eyes were closed. She could no longer see. And I laid my hands on hers and I said, I got it from here. No one will ever be able to hurt you. That is the message that I also sent to my younger self. I got it from here. I see you. I validate what your experience was, but I got it from here. I took that journey to say, I will no longer allow the things of the past to be this heavy baggage for me. I will no longer allow myself to be moved by this heavy baggage. I will no longer participate with carrying weight that is not mine. Oftentimes we have hid our hurt and our pain about the things that went on because one, we don't want to talk about it because we want to make sure that we're not being an embarrassment to our parents or causing any hurt or harm or anything of that nature. We want to make sure that when we tried to tell people when we were younger with things that was going on, they told us that it really didn't happen. We want to make sure that we don't go through that rejection again. I am saying to you, you have a right to empower yourself so you no longer have to carry that baggage. If someone caused a hurt and pain in you, and you are comfortable enough to say, I remember what you did to me. I remember how it impacted me. You have a right to do that. Here's the caution of it, though. I want to remind you that even if they don't confirm what you experienced, you still experienced it. Even if they don't ask for an apology, you still experienced it. Your experience didn't change. How you let it impact you now is what's changing. That's where the change occurs, because you no longer have to shudder at the person that was mean and nasty to you or violated you or anything like that. You can now stand toe to toe in the same room and not have to say a word, because I let you go. I won't carry that baggage anymore. You have the right to take that back. If you want to expose someone, expose them. You may even be saving another person's life, and it's okay. You may be saving another person's experience, right? The other part of that is usually violators can't see beyond their own violation. What do I mean by that? Typically when, and I've heard some pretty much horror stories with a lot of my clients whose parents were mentally and verbally abusive. And they carry that now to where my clients would sometimes shudder at the thought of having to say to their parents, okay, I'm gonna have to cut you off. I can't do this anymore. I will no longer tolerate this abuse. But they were strengthened to do that, and so can you. Don't carry the baggage any more than you have to. But the understanding is this: you never have to wait for anyone to validate your story anymore. You never have to ask anyone to prove that you're right. It was your experience. And if no one ever acknowledges it, moving into our next one, validate yourself. It is okay to say, I did go through this. I did experience this. I don't like it. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. And I'm no longer going to allow it to happen to me. I'm not going to tolerate that anymore, right? So you get the right to have that opportunity to validate what you experience. I know that typically what happens in counseling with me is I will have my clients to write down their story. And then they write letters to people that created an impact in their story. And even if they don't want to give those letters to those people or that person, they will then have what I call a fire party. Throw it in the fire pit, the grill, or whatever, set it on fire, and say to it, I am now released from the things of the past. They no longer hurt or hinder me. I'm freeing myself from the bondage of the past. I know it happened. Others may never validate it, but I validate that experience for me. That's what you owe yourself going into 2023. We have 5 days before the new year. So it's time to get to working. The next thing I want to discuss with you is assessing your self-commitment. I personally don't set New Year's resolutions. And here's the reason why. Because oftentimes when people establish resolutions, they're hyped for the first month or so, and then they die down. They quit. They're hyped until the first bump in the road, and then they die down and they quit. What I assess is, what is my commitment to me and my process on the journey of fulfilling my purpose? Where am I? How am I getting there? And what do I need to change if it's hindering me from meeting my purpose? I know personally for Marcia, one of the things that I've declared that I was going to work on was self-sabotage when it comes to me and weight loss. I have decided, you know what? I'm no longer going to hide, change up, cave in, and quit on my own health. Because when I do that, I give other people permission to cave in and quit on my health as well. Well, we have to own where we are moving and assess what our commitment is going to be, right? Part of that is I'm going to encourage you to write your commitment down. Put it out there. Make your commitment work for the best way that it needs to work for you. All right? All right. The next one is trust yourself. Learning to trust yourself takes time because you've gotten so conditioned to all of the past stuff that you don't know what your truth is and what isn't sometimes. If people disagree with you about your experience, you start questioning yourself. Listen, you know you. You know what you've gone through. You know your experiences, your truth. Other people can't live your life. You have to learn to go into your gut or your intuition and learn to appreciate your voice. In order to do that, though, you have got to spend some time with yourself and understand your voice. You've got to be able to say, this is who I am. I am my voice. I am my space. I am my truth. I'm my light. I am my encouragement. I am my validation. You have got to decide to go inside of you and get rid of all of that negative stuff. Kick it to the curb. You don't need all that negative stuff. For what? How is it helping you? When you have a bunch of unresolved negative issues, it creates dis-ease that rolls into disease, including anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, diabetes, overweight, and the gamut of things that go on. You have to learn to trust yourself so that you can maintain a physical, mental, and overall wellness about yourself, living authentically. The next thing is a pretty touchy subject because there are so many thoughts about this topic. Give yourself permission to forgive. And I know, there's so many people that says, I ain't gonna never forget. No one's asking you to. But what I will ask you to do is to identify how unforgiveness is helping you now. When you choose to hold on to things in a space of unforgiveness, the person or persons, situations, or circumstances are more in control in your life than you are. Because they get to tell you when to be angry. They get to tell you when to be sad. They get to tell you when to fight, when to flight, when to freeze. They get to tell you how to live your life. And they get to tell you without even acknowledging the pain that they brought to you. You get to decide, I forgive you for not knowing how to show up for me. I forgive you for not being able to meet my needs, even when I attempted to express them to you. I forgive you for overriding my story when I was telling you what was wrong with me and how it made me feel, and you came back to tell me how bad of a person in a manipulative way for me to feel bad to you. I know there are a lot of parents, specifically moms, and if you follow me enough, you know that I did a podcast on narcissists and spoke to a bunch of therapists about narcissism and the impact, and understanding that the highest elevated area of narcissists is a mom. And a lot of times it's that mom because of her own broken emotions where she didn't feel validated. And then when she sees your strength and she desires your strength. The only power that she has is manipulation, right? And it's unfortunate, but you want to give yourself even permission to forgive where she is or where they are or whomever. You want to do that because it really is not about them. It is all about you. That forgiveness is your empowerment. That forgiveness is your promise and your commitment to be your best self and live in your most authentic way. That's what that forgiveness does. Now, we're going to get down to the real good parts. When you begin to go through these steps of setting boundaries, writing your expectations, using your voice, validating yourself, assessing your commitment, trusting yourself, and forgiveness, you now have a clean slate. What do I mean? Do I mean that you're never going to think about the hurt and pain? No, that's not what I'm saying. What it means is it no longer has the power that it once had, right? So now what you're going to do is you're going to write your vision, your purpose, and your plan from a clean slate because you're not writing it from pain, right? When you give yourself permission to write your purpose from a clean slate, your vision, your plan from a clean slate, then it's kind of like baking a cake. When you have all of the right ingredients to bake a cake, the frosting is not really necessary except to establish decor. People eat the cake because all the right ingredients have been mixed up in order for it to be moist and to taste good, right? Well, that's your life. When you are writing all of your vision and identifying a plan and activating those plans, because you're going to go within yourself. What ingredients do you have in you? You want to be a life coach? What's my ingredients? This is your challenge to write down on your pen and on your paper what ingredients you have in you, because now you understand this is where I'm going. It's one thing to say I'm going to be a YouTube star. Then what? On TikTok right now, there's this thing going, the black girls follow train. And I noticed that on there are a lot of people who had no clue. They just knew that they needed to get on the Black Girl Follow train. They needed to get 1,000 people so that they can go live, but they had no plan. I saw a creator say, "Y'all don't know what I'm doing. I got 1,000 people. My daughter had to help me set up some sound, but I don't know why I'm here." You have to take the time to give yourself permission to understand what your vision is for you, not just jumping on the train. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about the Black Girl Follow train, because your girl is on it as well. Okay, so that's not what we're doing. What I'm saying is when you posture yourself in a place of vision, purpose, planning, and enactment, you're prepared when the train moves. You're prepared when you get ready to bake a cake. When you get ready to bake a cake, you know that you can't use self-rising flour for a cake. You got to have cake flour, right? Because if not, won't you be baking like cornbread? You have to identify what your actual ingredients are. You're the cake. You're the finished result of the cake. You're the one that holds all the resources for your moisture, for you feeling good, for you providing to others. You're the one. The frosting is just an add-on. Most people don't even like the frosting. They don't even taste the frosting. It's just pretty. But what they're getting to is the goodness of that cake. You have to decide that in the goodness of being the cake, that it's okay. You get to decide that. All right. So learn how to become the cake by writing your vision, identifying your plan step by step by step, activating that plan, and then moving forward. The last two, don't keep carrying your old baggage by throwing your money to the swines. What does that mean? What does that mean? The first time I heard this scripture, it says, don't throw your pearls, don't cast your pearls to the swine. And what I took from that was, don't keep taking your internal resources, tying them up in things that's not going to actually create a benefit and a journey of helpfulness to reaching your purpose. If you're casting your resources, if you're giving your resources, which is you, away to people that abuse it, take advantage of it, neglect you, the whole 9 yards, it's like throwing money in the air and catch what you can. You have to recognize that you have value. You, yes, you are value. When you recognize that you are the prize, that you are valuable, starting with you, right? Then you begin to move differently. You begin to adjust differently. You begin to have a different place of expectation. When you don't make that adjustment, you have a tendency to be too heavy, sluggish, overweight, overbearing, angry, irritable, sad, anxious. You have to decide that you no longer want to carry baggage that isn't yours. One of the best things that I could have done in my life was releasing my sexual violator from my life, because holding on to those scenarios kept me in that little girl's space that didn't know how to let go. But when I gave myself permission and I said, I got it from here, I no longer gave them space. They couldn't tag along the rest of my life. Did it take some work? Absolutely. Did I devalue my experience? Absolutely not, because my experience was still very present. What I decided to do is allow myself to find out how I was going to let it impact me. Okay. Last one. In 2023, I need you to accept that you are enough. I know I hear people saying more than enough. I don't need to be more when I'm already enough. Is that going to make a difference? No, because I'm enough. Just it, period. Accept that you are enough. Everything about you is enough. Your healing, your recovery, your restoration, your purpose, your goal, your life, it is enough. It is enough. When you can honor that in your life, you can recognize and appreciate where you are, who you are, and how you move. It has truly been a pleasure taking time out and having a successful podcast in 2022. I am so looking forward to 2023 season 2, some expanded sessions. We're going to run it a little longer this upcoming year. I'm excited to help people break through and live their most authentic life. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe on Spotify, like, share, subscribe on YouTube. And you can go to TikTok Authentically Peculiar, Authentically Peculiar, I think MRB or something like that. You can go to Instagram, Authentically Peculiar. You can go to Facebook, Peculiar One Counseling. You will find more and more information and resources of encouragement. We're going to beef that up in 2023. I think that for me, the purpose in my life of helping people generate and come to a place of authenticity is going to increase. So let's get ready for the ride. I see you. I validate you. I honor you for all that you are and all that you're moving in the direction to be. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, pass it on. Don't save this goodness all to yourself. Other people need to be able to experience the breakthrough. I'll see you on the other side of 2023. Take good care.